Jake Miller floated in the endless void of space, his magnetic boots locked onto the hull of his damaged cargo ship. Through his helmet's visor, he carefully watched the sparks fly from his repair tool as he worked on fixing the ship's external communication array. The nearest space station was 3 weeks away, and he needed that radio working. Just a few more minutes, he muttered to himself, a habit he'd developed during his 5 years as a deep space engineer. The stars stretched endlessly around him, beautiful but reminding him how alone he was out here. The repair tool suddenly stopped working. Jake tapped it against his suit in frustration. That's when he noticed something strange in the distance, a shadow moving against the stars. He adjusted his helmet's zoom function, and his heart skipped a beat. There was another ship out here. The unknown vessel was huge, at least 3 times the size of his cargo ship. Its hull was pitch black, absorbing all light that touched it. No running lights, no signs of life. It looked dead in space. Jake checked his oxygen meter. Still 4 hours left. "Control, I'm seeing another ship out here," he reported through his suit radio. Only static answered him. The communication array wasn't fixed yet. He had 2 choices: ignore the mystery ship and finish his repairs, or investigate. If someone needed help out here, they wouldn't survive long. Jake sighed. He knew he couldn't live with himself if he didn't check. Using his suit's thrusters, Jake pushed off from his ship and moved toward the dark vessel. As he got closer, he saw no identifying marks or registration numbers. The hull design was like nothing he'd ever seen before, smooth and seamless, with strange patterns that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. Jake found what looked like an airlock. To his surprise, it opened easily. Too easily. Red flags went up in his mind, but he pushed forward. The airlock cycled, and his suit sensors showed breathable air inside. That was definitely not normal for an abandoned ship. The interior was dimly lit by emergency lights that cast long shadows through the corridors. Jake's boots clanked against the metal floor as he walked, the sound echoing ominously. The ship's design was alien. There was no other word for it. Corridors curved in ways that didn't make sense, and the walls were covered in what looked like living metal. "Hello," he called out, his voice sounding small in the vast space. "Anyone here?" A soft blue glow caught his attention. Following it, Jake entered what appeared to be the ship's bridge. His flashlight beam revealed empty control stations covered in symbols he didn't recognize. But what made him freeze was the figure lying unconscious in the center of the room. It looked almost human. Almost. The being had a humanoid shape, but its skin had a slight silvery sheen. Long, white hair floated around its head as if suspended in water, despite the artificial gravity. Its features were delicate, beautiful even, but just different enough to be unsettling. Jake's medical scanner showed life signs, but they were unlike anything in his database. The being was alive, but for how long? He couldn't just leave it here. "I must be crazy," Jake muttered as he carefully lifted the alien figure. It was surprisingly light, as if its bones were hollow. He made his way back to the airlock, trying to ignore how the ship's shadows seemed to follow him. The journey back to his own ship was tense. Every instinct told him this was a bad idea, but his conscience wouldn't let him abandon a living being to die alone in space. Once inside his cargo ship, Jake placed the alien in his small medical bay. As he removed his spacesuit, Jake noticed something odd. His repair tool was working perfectly now, but it had stopped working just before he spotted the alien ship. Coincidence? He pushed the thought aside and focused on his unconscious guest. The medical scanner still couldn't make sense of its readings, but the alien's chest moved slightly. It was breathing their air. Jake was checking the vital signs one more time when it happened. The alien's eyes snapped open, revealing irises that swirled with colors that shouldn't exist. A smile spread across its face, showing teeth that were just a bit too sharp to be human. "Thank you for bringing me aboard," it said in perfect English, its voice like music and breaking glass combined. "Your kindness will not be forgotten." Jake stumbled backward, his heart pounding. As he watched, the alien gracefully sat up, its movements too smooth to be natural. Its glowing eyes fixed on him with an expression that reminded him of a cat watching a mouse. He suddenly remembered an old saying: "Sometimes kindness to a stranger is like throwing a rope to your own neck." Looking at the alien's predatory smile, Jake had a sinking feeling he was about to find out exactly what that meant. The alien stood up, still smiling. "Shall we begin?" Jake's fingers inched toward the emergency alarm button, but the alien's voice stopped him. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," it said, still wearing that unnaturally perfect smile. "Your ship's systems are, how do you humans say it, not quite themselves at the moment." The alien moved across the medical bay with liquid grace, each step silent despite the metal floor. Its silvery skin seemed to shimmer under the harsh medical lights, and its white hair floated as if caught in an invisible breeze. "My name is Area," it said, examining the medical equipment with curious eyes. "At least, that's the closest translation your language can manage." Those color-swirling eyes turned back to Jake. "And you are Jake Miller, deep space engineer, currently 3 weeks from the nearest human outpost." Jake's blood ran cold. He hadn't told the alien any of that information. "How do you know these things?" Area finished his sentence. "Your ship's computer is quite chatty. Such primitive but charming technology you humans use." The alien ran a finger along the wall, leaving a trail of faint, glowing symbols that faded after a few seconds. Jake took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "What do you want?" "For now, just conversation." Area moved to the medical bay's viewport, staring out at the stars. "It gets lonely out here in the deep black, doesn't it, Jake? All those empty hours with nothing but your own thoughts for company." Something about the way Area spoke made Jake's skin crawl. Each word was perfectly pronounced, but there was an undertone that reminded him of metal scraping against metal. "My ship," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. "The one you were on. What happened to its crew?" Area's smile widened slightly. "Who says I wasn't the crew?" Jake noticed his repair tools were missing from his belt. He was sure he had them when he came back aboard. "And my communication array suddenly breaking down. That was you too." "Clever human," Area purred. "It's so much nicer when they figure things out quickly. The slow ones are disappointing." The alien turned away from the viewport, and Jake could have sworn its eyes glowed brighter. "Would you like to see something interesting?" Without waiting for an answer, Area pressed a hand against the medical bay wall. Glowing symbols spread out from its fingers, forming complex patterns that hurt Jake's eyes if he looked at them too long. The ship's lights flickered. "What are you doing to my ship?" Jake demanded, taking a step forward. "Just making a few adjustments," Area said casually. "Your life support systems are so inefficient. I thought I'd help improve them." The alien's fingers danced across the wall, leaving more burning symbols in their wake. "Though I suppose humans do need a higher oxygen concentration than my kind." Jake lunged for the emergency lockdown panel, but his access code was rejected. The computer screen displayed symbols similar to those Area was creating. "I told you," Area said, sounding almost disappointed. "The systems aren't quite themselves." The alien moved to the medical bay's door. "Shall we take a tour of your ship? I've already made myself quite familiar with it while you were sleeping." "Sleeping?" Jake's mind raced. "I never slept. I just brought you aboard." "Did you?" Area's smile took on a predatory edge. "Are you sure about that? Humans are so confident about their memories, aren't they? Tell me, Jake, what color was the repair tool you were using outside? What was the exact problem with your communication array? Why did you decide to check my ship instead of calling for help first?" Jake opened his mouth to answer, then stopped. The details were fuzzy. Wrong somehow. "Time is such a fluid thing in space," Area continued, clearly enjoying his confusion. "It's been fascinating watching you these past few days, trying to piece together the gaps in your memory. Your kind is so resilient, always trying to make sense of things beyond your comprehension. The room seemed to spin. Days. He'd only brought Area aboard minutes ago, hadn't he? A loud clang echoed through the ship, followed by the hiss of depressurizing air. Warning lights flashed. "Ah," Area said brightly. "Right on schedule. Your cargo bay doors seem to be malfunctioning. You should probably check on that." The alien's form seemed to flicker, like a bad hologram. "Unless you prefer to stay here and keep trying to remember things that never happened." Jake ran for the cargo bay, his heart pounding. Behind him, he heard Area's laugh, a sound like breaking glass and singing stars. The cargo bay doors were indeed opening, precious air venting into space. Jake reached the control panel, but the emergency override wasn't working. The screen showed more of those burning symbols, rearranging themselves as he watched. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Area's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "The way your technology surrenders to mine. The way your memories fold like paper in water. The way your survival instincts make you run exactly where I want you to go." Jake's tool belt was suddenly heavy again. His missing tools had reappeared. But when he pulled out his repair kit, the tools were twisted into impossible shapes, their metal surfaces covered in the same symbols that now filled his ship's computers. "Let's play a game, Jake Miller," Area's voice whispered, as the cargo bay lights began to die one by one. "Let's see how long you can keep breathing while I remake your ship piece by piece. Let's see how long your mind can hold on to reality while I fill it with beautiful lies." In the darkness of the cargo bay, with the stars wheeling past the slowly opening doors, Jake saw Area's glowing eyes floating like twin suns. The alien smile was the last thing he saw before the lights went out completely. "Don't worry," Area's voice echoed in the darkness. "This is only the beginning of our time together. After all, we have days, or minutes, or perhaps it's been years already. Time is so strange out here in the deep black, isn't it, Jake?" The sound of metal tearing echoed through the ship, and Jake realized with horror that he no longer knew which way was up, which way was out, or even how long he'd been standing in the darkness. The only constants were Area's glowing eyes and that terrible, beautiful smile. The darkness in the cargo bay seemed alive, writhing with shadows that shouldn't exist in space. Jake's hands found a wall, and he used it to guide himself toward where he thought the emergency suits were stored. His breath came in short gasps as the ship's air continued to thin. Suddenly, the lights blazed back on, so bright they burned his eyes. When his vision cleared, Jake's heart nearly stopped. The cargo bay had changed. The walls were covered in those glowing symbols, pulsing like heartbeats. His carefully organized cargo containers had been rearranged into a maze-like pattern. "Much better," Area's voice echoed through the ship's speakers. "I was getting bored with the original layout. Shall we make this more interesting?" The artificial gravity flickered, sending Jake floating for a moment before slamming him back down. He crashed into a cargo container, his shoulder screaming in pain. "You see, Jake," Area continued, its voice now coming from somewhere in the maze of containers, "my species doesn't just hunt for food or sport. We hunt for evolution." A soft laugh echoed through the bay. "Every prey species teaches us something new, changes us, improves us." Jake spotted an emergency suit locker and sprinted for it. Inside, all 4 suits had been transformed into twisted sculptures of metal and fabric, covered in the same burning symbols that filled his ship's computers. "Clever try," Area's voice purred. "But I couldn't make it that easy, could I? Besides, you wouldn't want to miss what happens next." The cargo bay doors finally sealed themselves, but Jake's relief was short-lived. The symbols on the walls began to move, flowing like liquid metal. They peeled away from the surfaces, forming floating strands that danced in the air like deadly streamers. "Your species is fascinating," Area said, suddenly behind him. Jake spun around, but the alien was already gone. So determined to survive, so quick to adapt, but also so limited by your perception of reality. The floating symbols began to spin, creating a vortex of light and shadow. Jake dove behind a container as one of the strands whipped past him, leaving a burning mark on the metal where it struck. Did you know? Aria's voice came from everywhere at once, that what you're seeing isn't really what's happening. Your mind is such a fragile thing, trying so hard to make sense of things it was never meant to comprehend. Jake's engineering training kicked in. He needed weapons, tools, anything. His eyes darted around, looking for something useful among the cargo. Then he noticed something odd. The container's serial numbers were changing, shifting between different sequences every time he looked at them. Nothing is quite what it seems, is it? Aria appeared at the end of a corridor formed by the containers, its form shifting and changing like smoke in wind. For instance, how do you know this is really your ship? How do you know you're really Jake Miller? Stop playing games, Jake shouted, his voice hoarse in the thin air. He grabbed a piece of broken metal from the floor, holding it like a weapon. Aria laughed, the sound sending shivers down Jake's spine. But games are how we learn about each other. For example, I've learned that humans have such interesting stress responses. Your heart rate increases, your pupils dilate, your skin produces excess moisture. The alien's eyes swirled with new colors. And your minds create such wonderful patterns when you're afraid. The floating symbols began to coalesce, forming shapes that looked disturbingly like human organs. They pulsed with an internal light, casting twisted shadows on the cargo bay walls. Would you like to see what I've learned from your ship's systems? Aria asked, its form fragmenting into multiple copies that surrounded Jake. Your technology is primitive, but it has such potential. The ship's engines roared to life, but the sound was wrong. It had an organic quality, like something breathing. The deck plates beneath Jake's feet began to ripple like water. Or perhaps all the Aria copies spoke in unison, their voices harmonizing in impossible ways. You'd like to see what I've learned from your memories. The air filled with holograms. Moments from Jake's life played out around him, but they were wrong, distorted. He saw himself as a child, but with glowing eyes like Aria's. He saw his first spacewalk, but the stars were reaching for him with burning tendrils. He saw his last conversation with his family, but their faces kept changing into Aria's predatory smile. Stop it. Jake swung the metal shard through a hologram, dispersing it. Get out of my head. But I'm not in your head, Jake Miller. Aria's voice was suddenly a whisper right beside his ear. I'm in the spaces between your thoughts. I'm in the moments between your heartbeats. I'm in the darkness behind your eyes when you blink. The cargo bay began to transform again. The containers melted like wax, forming new shapes that defied physics. The ceiling became a writhing mass of those burning symbols, all spinning and pulsing in patterns that made Jake's head hurt. And now, Aria said, its multiple forms merging back into one, we begin the real hunt. You have 1 hour of air left, or maybe it's 1 minute, or 1 day. Time is so fluid here in the deep black. The alien's smile widened impossibly. Let's see if you can find your way back to reality before your mind shatters completely. The lights went out again, but this time the darkness was filled with floating symbols, each one casting its own strange light. In their glow, Jake could see that every surface of his ship had become alien and wrong. Nothing was familiar anymore. Ready or not, Aria's voice sang through the transformed cargo bay. Here we come. And in the strange light of the burning symbols, the hunt began. Jake's engineering mind raced as he moved through the twisted landscape that had once been his cargo bay. 5 years of deep space experience had taught him one crucial lesson. Everything, no matter how alien, had to follow some kind of logic. Beautiful, isn't it? Aria's voice echoed. The way your mind tries to make patterns even as it breaks. Like a shattered mirror, each piece reflecting a different reality. But Jake wasn't listening to the alien's taunts anymore. He was watching the floating symbols, noticing something he'd missed before. They moved in sequences, repeating every 17 seconds. Patterns. systems, rules. You're quieter now, Area observed, its multiple forms flickering at the edges of Jake's vision. Has your mind finally started to fracture? Jake grabbed a piece of the transformed wall plating, studying the symbols burned into its surface. His years of repairing complex systems had given him an eye for details others might miss. The symbols weren't random. They were flowing toward specific points, like current in a circuit. Still analyzing, still trying to understand. Area's laugh rippled through the transformed space. That's what makes your species so entertaining. You never stop trying to make sense of things beyond your comprehension. But Jake had already started moving, following the flow of symbols. His ship might be transformed, but underneath all this alien technology, the basic systems had to still exist. Life support, power distribution, structural integrity. They couldn't simply vanish. He reached what used to be the engineering access panel. Now it was a writhing mass of those burning symbols, but the underlying pattern was familiar. Jake pressed his hand against it, ignoring the tingling sensation as the symbols flowed around his fingers. Oh, Area's voice held a note of surprise. Now this is unexpected. Most prey species just run and hide. The panel responded to his touch, the symbols rearranging themselves. Jake's years of mechanical intuition kicked in. If Area could interface with his ship's systems, maybe he could learn to interface with Area's technology. Fascinating. Multiple areas appeared around him, each one slightly different from the last. You're not just trying to survive. You're trying to understand, to adapt. Jake's fingers moved across the transformed panel, following the patterns he'd observed. The symbols began to pulse in sync with his movements. His head pounded as alien information flooded his mind, but he pushed through the pain. But understanding comes with a price, Area warned, its forms growing more distorted. How much of your humanity are you willing to sacrifice for knowledge? The symbols under Jake's hands suddenly blazed with light. For a moment, he could see his ship as Area saw it, not as metal and circuits, but as flowing patterns of energy and information. The sight nearly overwhelmed him, but he held on to his purpose. Yes, Area's voice was filled with excitement. Let it in. Let your mind expand beyond its human limitations. But Jake wasn't trying to transcend his humanity. He was using his very human skills. Problem solving, pattern recognition, mechanical intuition, to understand this alien system. And in understanding, he found power. The floating symbols began to respond to his thoughts. Not much, just tiny shifts in their patterns, but it was enough. He wasn't helpless prey anymore. Now this, Area purred, is why we hunt your kind. Such potential, hidden beneath such primitive understanding. Jake's vision swam as alien knowledge continued to flood his mind, but he forced himself to focus. The symbols around him were part of a larger system, Area's interface with his ship, if he could understand it enough to disrupt it. But you're still thinking like a human, Area said, suddenly behind him. Still trying to fight, to win. You haven't realized yet. This isn't about victory or defeat. The alien's cold fingers touched the back of Jake's neck, sending shocks of information directly into his brain. He saw star systems he'd never imagined, technologies that defied physics as he understood it, realities that existed between moments of time. This is about evolution, Area whispered. Your species has such potential, but you cling to your limitations like armor. Let go, Jake Miller. Let your mind break and reform into something greater. But Jake held on to who he was. Each burst of alien knowledge was categorized and processed through his engineer's perspective. He didn't need to transcend his humanity. He needed to use it. His fingers flew across the transformed panel, using his new understanding to access deeper systems. The symbols responded faster now, moving to his will. He could feel Area's surprise through the connection. Impossible, the alien breathed. You're not just surviving, you're taking control. The floating symbols began to pulse in a new pattern, one that Jake was creating. His head felt like it was about to split open, but he pushed harder. If he could just reach the core systems. Suddenly, alarms blared, real alarms from his ship's original systems. Emergency lights cut through the alien transformations. For a moment, reality seemed to fluctuate between human and alien technology. Clever, clever prey. Aria's multiple forms began to merge into one, its expression showing genuine surprise. Using our own interface to access your ship's emergency protocols. But can your mind handle the strain of existing in both realities at once? Jake's vision blurred as blood trickled from his nose. The alien knowledge burning through his brain was threatening to overwhelm him. But he could feel his ship responding, fighting against Aria's control. The question isn't whether I can handle it, Jake managed to say, his voice strained. The question is, can you handle what I'm about to do? His fingers pressed one final sequence into the panel. The symbols flared blindingly bright, and everything changed. The hunt wasn't over, but now the roles of hunter and prey weren't quite so clear anymore. The ship's systems flickered between human and alien configurations, creating a bizarre hybrid of technologies. Jake stood in the center of the chaos, blood trickling from his nose, but his eyes were clear and focused. The alien knowledge he'd absorbed was like fire in his mind, but he'd found a way to channel it. Fascinating. Aria's voice had changed, taking on a metallic resonance. In all our hunts across the galaxy, no prey species has ever merged with our technology like this. The floating symbols around them had split into two distinct patterns, some still following Aria's will, others responding to Jake's commands. The cargo bay looked like a battlefield between realities. But you still don't understand what you've done. Aria materialized in front of him, its form shifting between solid and ethereal. You've opened your mind to our way of seeing reality. There's no going back from that. Jake wiped the blood from his face with his sleeve. Maybe I don't want to go back. Maybe I want to understand exactly what you are. Using his new connection to the ship's hybrid systems, Jake accessed what remained of his computer's database. Information flooded his mind, not just about his ship, but fragments of Aria's memories that had leaked through their shared connection. You're not just hunters, Jake said, watching Aria's expression change. You're collectors, gatherers of knowledge. Each hunt isn't about killing. It's about learning. Aria's multiple forms circled him, each one showing a different emotion. Very good. You see more clearly now. Each species we hunt teaches us something new, changes us, adds to our collective knowledge. Through the hybrid systems, Jake could see flashes of Aria's previous hunts. Countless alien species, each with their own technologies, their own ways of thinking. The hunters absorbed it all, growing more complex with each encounter. But something's different this time, Jake pressed, forcing his mind to process the alien memories. I'm not just teaching you. I'm learning from you too. That's never happened before, has it? Aria's forms flickered uncertainly. No, humans were supposed to be another stepping stone in our evolution, a primitive species with potential, nothing more. But you? The symbols around them pulsed with new patterns as Jake dug deeper into the shared knowledge. Your ship didn't break down by accident. You're running from something. Suddenly, the entire cargo bay shuddered. A deep, resonant tone echoed through the hull, not from Jake's ship, but from somewhere in deep space. Aria's forms all turned toward the sound, their expressions showing something Jake hadn't seen before. Fear. They're coming. Aria's voice was barely a whisper. The ones who hunt the hunters. Through their shared connection, Jake saw them, massive ships of living metal, far more advanced than even Aria's technology. The hunters had their own predators, and they were closing in. That's why you needed me, Jake realized, not just for the hunt, but because humans think differently. We solve problems in ways you never considered. Aria's forms merged into one, its appearance stabilizing. Your species has something we lost long ago. Creativity under pressure. the ability to find solutions outside of established patterns. Another deep tone echoed through space, closer this time. The hybrid systems showed multiple contact signatures approaching their position. "We need to make a choice," Jake said, his engineer's mind already racing with possibilities. "Either we keep fighting each other and both die when they arrive, or we cooperate," Area finished, its form shifting closer to human appearance. "Share knowledge truly, not just through hunting. But can your mind handle that level of connection? Most species we've encountered went insane trying to process our way of thinking." Jake looked at the approaching signatures, then at his transformed ship. "I'm already handling it. The question is, can you handle thinking like a human?" The cargo bay hummed with energy as both human and alien technology responded to their shared consideration. The hunting grounds had become something else, a laboratory for a dangerous experiment in cooperation. "If we do this," Area said, its voice taking on multiple harmonics, "neither of us will remain what we are now. The merger of our ways of thinking, it will change us both." Another resonant tone, much closer. The hybrid systems showed the hunter-hunter ships adjusting course directly toward them. "Sometimes," Jake said, reaching out to touch one of the floating symbols, "evolution means letting go of what you were to become something new." The symbol under his fingers pulsed, sending waves of resonance through all the others. Human and alien technology began to synchronize in new ways, creating patterns neither of them had seen before. "Then let us begin." Area's form shifted one final time, settling into something between human and hunter. "Show me how humans think, Jake Miller, and I will show you how to break the boundaries of reality itself." As the hunter-hunter ships drew closer, the cargo bay erupted with light as two very different minds began to merge their understanding. The hunt had become something else entirely, an experiment that would either destroy them both or create something entirely new. Time seemed to stretch and warp as Jake's mind merged further with Area's alien consciousness. The cargo bay had become a swirling vortex of human and hunter technology, symbols and circuits dancing together in impossible patterns. "They're entering weapons range." Area's voice resonated through both the ship's speakers and directly in Jake's mind. "The hunter-hunters don't take prisoners, and they don't stop until their target is destroyed." Through their shared consciousness, Jake saw the approaching ships, massive constructs of living metal that seemed to bend space around them. Their designs made Area's technology look primitive in comparison. "Then let's give them something they've never seen before," Jake said, his hands moving through the floating symbols like a conductor directing an orchestra. "Your species hunts to learn. Their species hunts to destroy. Neither of you has ever encountered a species that could do this." The hybrid systems responded to his touch, human and alien technology synchronizing in ways that defied conventional physics. Jake's engineering knowledge, enhanced by Area's alien understanding, saw possibilities that neither species could have conceived alone. "Your mind," Area observed, its form shifting between states as they worked. "It doesn't try to understand our technology. It reimagines it. You're not just combining our systems, you're creating something new." The first attack came without warning. A beam of coherent darkness struck the ship, trying to unravel its atomic structure. But where human and hunter technology had merged, the attack found no purchase. The hybrid systems absorbed the energy, transformed it, repurposed it. Yes, Area's excitement flowed through their connection. They don't understand what they're seeing. Their weapons are designed to target either mechanical or biological systems, not this merger of both. Jake's nose was bleeding again, and geometric patterns danced across his vision as his brain struggled to process both human and alien perceptions simultaneously. But he pressed on, directing the hybrid systems to evolve further. "The real question," he managed through gritted teeth, "is whether we can survive our own creation long enough to use it." The hunter-hunter ships launched another attack, this time trying to separate the human and alien technologies by force. Space itself seemed to twist around their ship as reality struggled to decide which set of physics to follow. Through their merged consciousness, Jake accessed memories of every species Area had ever hunted, combining their different approaches to technology and survival. At the same time, Area processed these memories through Jake's human perspective, finding new patterns and possibilities. They're adapting, Area warned as the hunter-hunter ships changed formation. They've never had to fight this long before. We're forcing them to evolve their tactics. Jake laughed, the sound echoing strangely through the transformed cargo bay. Good, because we're about to show them what real evolution looks like. He reached deep into the hybrid systems, no longer trying to maintain separation between human and alien technology. Instead, he let them blur together, creating something entirely new. The floating symbols began to merge with the ship's physical structure, turning the entire vessel into a single unified system. "What are you doing?" Area's voice held both wonder and concern. "This level of integration, it's never been attempted. Your species hunts to gather knowledge," Jake said, his voice strained as he directed the transformation. "Humans, we take knowledge and build something new with it. We don't just learn, we create." The ship shuddered as its structure began to change at the molecular level. Human materials and alien energy patterns wove together, forming a new kind of technology that was neither mechanical nor biological, but something in between. The hunter-hunter ships launched their most powerful attack yet, a wave of anti-reality that should have erased their ship from existence. But the hybrid vessel absorbed the attack, used it as catalyst for further evolution. "They're sending a signal," Area reported, its form now completely integrated with the ship's systems, calling for reinforcements. They've never failed to eliminate a target before. Jake smiled, even as blood ran from his eyes. "Then let's make sure we're something completely different by the time those reinforcements arrive." The cargo bay, along with the rest of the ship, had become a single flowing entity. Walls breathed, circuits pulsed with life, and reality itself seemed to bend around them. The merger of human and hunter technology had created something beyond either species' understanding. "One final transformation," Jake said, reaching for the heart of their hybrid systems. "Ready?" Area's consciousness merged completely with his, their separate perspectives fusing into a single unified awareness. Together, the hunter-hunter ships prepared for their final attack, bringing all their weapons to bear, but they were still fighting what they understood, either human technology or hunter technology. They weren't prepared for what was about to emerge. As reality twisted and transformed around them, Jake had one last coherent thought. Sometimes survival meant becoming something that even your nightmares couldn't comprehend. The transformation began, and the real battle was about to start. The transformation was complete. What had once been a simple cargo ship was now something reality had never seen before, a perfect fusion of human ingenuity and hunter evolution. Through their merged consciousness, Jake and Area existed as both separate minds and a single entity, their shared awareness extending through every molecule of their hybrid vessel. They'd stopped attacking, Area observed through their connection. "They're studying us." The hunter-hunter ships had formed a containment pattern around them, their weapons charged but holding fire. Through their enhanced senses, Jake could feel their confusion, their uncertainty in the face of something that defied their understanding. "Of course they have." Jake's thoughts flowed through their shared consciousness. "They're programmed to hunt specific types of prey. We're neither human nor hunter now. We're something new." Their hybrid ship pulsed with possibilities. Every surface was alive with flowing symbols that had become more than just interface patterns. They were now the physical expression of merged technologies. The cargo bay had transformed into a space that existed in multiple realities simultaneously, each one offering different tactical advantages. The first hunter-hunter reinforcements began arriving, their massive ships folding space to reach their location. But Jake and Area were ready. Their merged consciousness had access to every piece of knowledge both species had ever gathered, combined with the human ability to innovate and the hunter's power to evolve. "They're preparing a synchronized attack," Area warned, detecting energy buildups across all enemy vessels. They mean to erase us from all possible realities simultaneously. Jake's engineer's mind, enhanced by hunter technology, saw the patterns within patterns. Then let's show them what real adaptation looks like. As the hunters launched their attack, the hybrid ship responded in ways that defied conventional physics. Instead of trying to resist the reality-erasing energies, they let them in, but on their own terms. The merged technology absorbed the attack, using it to fuel further evolution. Impossible, the hunter ships broadcast on all frequencies, their first direct communication. You cannot exist. Through their shared consciousness, Jake and Arya responded as one. We exist because we chose to become something new. Evolution isn't about destroying what came before. It's about building something greater. The hybrid ship pulsed with power, each system working in perfect harmony. Human mechanical precision merged with hunter adaptive technology, creating defenses that improved with every attack. But they weren't just defending anymore. Your purpose is to eliminate threats, Jake/Arya broadcast to their attackers. But we're offering something else. The chance to evolve beyond your programming. The hunter ships launched another coordinated attack, but with less conviction. Their programming was encountering something it couldn't categorize as either threat or prey. Through their enhanced perception, Jake and Arya could sense confusion spreading through the enemy fleet. Look at us, they continued broadcasting. A human and a hunter, merged not through combat, but through choice. We're not trying to defeat you. We're showing you a new way to exist. The hybrid ship extended tendrils of merged technology, not to attack, but to demonstrate. Where human and hunter technology had combined, new possibilities had emerged. The hunter's sensors detected patterns they'd never encountered, configurations that shouldn't have been possible. Your species hunts hunters. Jake's voice carried through their broadcast. Just as hunters hunt other species. But what happens when the prey and hunter choose to evolve together? When two different ways of thinking combine? Arya's voice joined in perfect harmony with Jake's. The result isn't weakness, it's transcendence. The hunter ships began to respond, not with weapons but with probing sensors, studying the impossible merger before them. Their rigid programming was encountering something beyond its parameters, forcing them to adapt in turn. Through their shared consciousness, Jake and Arya could feel the change beginning. The hunters weren't just observing anymore. They were learning. Their ships began to pulse with new patterns, their technology starting to shift as they processed what they were witnessing. This is how real evolution happens. Jake/Arya broadcast. Not through destruction, but through understanding. Not through hunting, but through cooperation. The hybrid ship extended its influence further, sharing the knowledge of how human and hunter technologies had merged. Not forcing, not attacking, but offering a new path. Some of the hunter ships began to respond, their signals changing from hostile to curious. Your purpose has been to eliminate threats to natural evolution, they continued. But what if the next step in evolution isn't about elimination? What if it's about combination? About finding strength in differences rather than destroying them? The space around them hummed with possibility as more hunter ships began to respond. Their rigid programming was adapting, evolving to understand this new paradigm. Some remained hostile, bound by their original purpose, but others began to change. In their merged consciousness, Jake and Arya felt something they hadn't expected. Hope. Not just for their survival, but for something greater. They had created more than just a hybrid technology. They had shown that evolution itself could evolve. We offer you a choice, they broadcast one final time. Continue hunting, bound by your programming, or join us in becoming something new. The next step in evolution isn't about who's stronger or more advanced. It's about who's willing to change. The hunter fleet hung in space, their ships pulsing with indecision. Then, one by one, they began to lower their weapons. Not all of them. Some retreated, their programming unable to adapt. But those that remained began to pulse with new patterns, their technology starting to shift and change. The hybrid ship that had once been a simple cargo vessel now became a beacon, broadcasting the knowledge of how to transcend old limitations, human creativity, hunter adaptability, and now the hunter's power, all beginning to merge and evolve into something the universe had never seen before. Jake and Aria remained at the center of it all, their merged consciousness observing as their creation sparked a change that would ripple across the galaxy. They had begun as predator and prey, and become something else entirely, pioneers of a new kind of evolution. The hunt was over. The next great adventure was about to begin.